Hello everyone, welcome to week 1 lesson 2 of your intro to programming and data science course at SA Professional Academy. Today we learn about data structures in Python. We have 4 built-in data structures in Python. We have the list, the dictionary, the set, and the tuple. So let's learn about the list first. Now the list is like a collection of items. It can be of any type of data. It can be a text, it can be string, it can be numbers, float, or whatever. But it's just a collection of items separated by commas. So let's see how this works. Let me create my file. Let's say lists.py. Now to create an empty list in Python, we just need to create a variable and set it to a list. So let's say my list. We have variable equals to then square brackets. Now this square bracket is what we use to create lists in Python. So this is like saying I have a variable, I want to set it to an empty list. So now we have a list right now in our code, but the list is empty. So when you want to add things to your list inside of your code, we just need to do something like this. We can say so books, so shelves. We can basically add anything that we want inside of our list. We can add numbers, 18, we can add floating point values, let's say 82.29. We can add as many things as we want in our list. Now let me try to print this list and see what it looks like. So now print then my list. And when I run my code, let's say cd lesson 2. Now let me run my code python 3 list.py. Now we have our list showing inside of our terminal. So now we can use this in the case of, let's say you're trying to keep track of how many things you want to get in a grocery store when you go shopping. So you can use like a list to keep track of that. So you have like a list of everything you want to buy when you get to the grocery store. Now the list is mutable, which means we can update it. So let's say you actually after creating a list, you change your mind and decide, okay, I don't want to get this thing again. You just go ahead and remove it from the list. And let's see how these things can actually be performed using the Python list. Let me create a new list. Let's say shopping equals. So we have like a list of every item that we want to get when we go to the grocery store. So let's create a list. Let's say apples, bananas, vegetables, oil. So now we have a list of things that we want to get in the grocery store. So like we have apples, bananas, vegetables, and oil. So we could actually perform some actions and we could like add some new things to it. So let me try to print the contents of the shopping list this time. So let's say shopping, then so we have the apples, bananas, vegetables, and oil. So now we could actually begin to get different values in the list, like one after the other. So when you look at this list now, we have some positions there. We have the first position, second, third, and the last one. So we can begin to get items from this list using their position alone. Like we could say, okay, I want to check whatever comes first in my list. I want to check whatever comes in position of 2 or the third position or the last one. So we can do this in Python, and it's called indexing. Indexing allows us to check or assess like values inside of our lists using numbers like corresponding to their position. So whenever we use the index of 1, so we get like the second position. So indexing starts from 0, right? So when index of 0, when you try to get a value in a list with the index of 0, that means you're trying to get the first value in the list. When we go to index of 1, we have the second value in the list. So index of 0 comes with apple, index of 1 goes to banana because that's the second position. Then we check index of 2, that goes to the next one. So we start from 0 and begin counting up onto the end of the list. So let's try to get this. So to use list indexing, we use the square brackets also. So let's try to do that. Let me say I want to print shopping, then let's say shopping of 1. So when I say shopping of 1, I'm trying to get the second value inside of my shopping list. Now when I run my code again, we have bananas coming up using the print. So we have bananas because it comes in second position, even though I'm using the index of 1. That's because the indexing starts at 0. So if I want to get like the first item of the list, I'll just use the index of 0, and this will get me the first item, which will be apples. So I can also use like index of 4, index of 3 actually, because that's the last item in the list. Now when I run this now, we have oil. But now when I use index of 4, that's like extending out of the list. That's longer than the list, and that would raise an error for us actually. So when I come here and use 4, when I run my code again, as you can see, we have here an error, list index out of range. That's because I'm trying to get a position in my list that is not actually existing. So you can see it's out of range. That's the error. So let's change this back. But what happens when we actually use negative numbers inside of list? We could actually think of that because we go from 0 all the way up. But what happens when we use negative numbers? So let me use negative 1 and see what happens. Now when I run my code, you can see we still have oil. So this, using negative numbers inside of the list indexing, is called negative indexing. It allows us to access values of our list counting from the end of the list. So when I use -1, we start at the end of the list. -2 goes to the second position from the end of the list. -3 goes to bananas, and -4 goes to apples. So when I change this now to -3, we should get the third item from the end of the list. So we have 1, 2, 3, and then we have bananas. So when I run my code now, we should have bananas because it's the third item from the end of the list. Right, so let's also try to like add values to this list. Like you suddenly remember a few things you also want to get from the store, so you like add them to the list. So what we just do is we come here in our code and say shopping dot append, and then we pass in whatever we want to add to our list. So now let's say bread. Now when I run my code again, our list will now contain bread. Right, so we can also begin to add like multiple values. Let me come here again, add one more value. So let's say right here, let's change this to rice. Now our list would also contain rice. So we can also like check the whole length of what's in our list using the list.length method. So now if I want to check the whole length of my list, let me just print. I'll use the f string. So let me say the length of the shopping list is, then we have shopping dot length. So now when I run my code again, so I think the len is length. And when I run my code again, we have the length of the list is 6 because we have 6 items inside of our list. So we have apples, bananas, vegetables, oil, and bread. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we can see we have 6 items in our list using this len function. So like this len is short for length. It checks the length of our list and returns the number to us. So let's try to remove some values from our list actually. So let me come here and say shopping dot remove. Now let's say I want to remove apples from the list because I don't want apples anymore. So I'll just go ahead and put in quotes apples, and then apples will be removed from the list. Now when I run this again, as you can see, apples is now gone and the length of our list is now 5. So let's get going. Let's try to pop. So we have a pop method. The pop method removes from the end regardless of what is there. So let's say shopping dot pop. Now when I run my code again, rice should be gone. And now the length of our list is now 4 because the pop removes from the end. So that's how it is. We've covered lists in Python and the uses. So let's now go to the next one. Let's go to dictionaries in Python. So let me go ahead and create a new file for that. Let me say dict.py. Dictionaries allows us to store data in key and value pairs, meaning we can have like a user, then the name of the user, like age, the age of the user. Then we can begin to use these things for keys and values. Like the age of the user tells us the age. We have like the name of the user tells us the name of the user, and then the keys and the values. So age for the value of age, name for the value of name, and the like. So let's create an empty dictionary and see the syntax to create dictionaries in our code. Let me start this by saying, let's try to create a user object. So we have the user, then the syntax for creating a dictionary in Python is using the curly braces. So we have an empty curly braces, then we have the keys and the values separated by colon and commas. So we have the key. So let's say we have key here, then to be linked to the value using the colon sign. Then we have value, and each key and value pair will be separated by a comma. So the next one will come right after this. So now let's say for the key, let's try to store the user's name, age, and email. So let's say name. Then for this one, let's say James Gordon. For the email, so let's say email. And then for the age, let's say age 29. So all of this can also be like in the same line. It's just more, it just looks better when you have it like on different lines. You can set all of this back and have them on the same line together, and that will still work fine. It's still correct, but it just looks much better if it's like separated into different lines, because I don't know. So let's try to print the content of this dictionary now. So let's say print, then let's say print user. Now let me run my code. Python 3 dict.py. Now you can see in our terminal the contents of our dictionary. So we can actually begin to update things inside of our dictionary using this. So let's say let's try to get like a single value inside of the dictionary using the key. So let's say I'm trying to find out what the user's name is. So I'll just come to my code and say print user square bracket. So similarly to the list where we have like the indexing, where we use the position like numbers to index inside of our list and get values. We also have indexing inside of the dictionary, but we use the keys instead. So let me just go ahead here and say age. So now this should get me the age of the user. Now when I run my code again, we have 29. When I try to get the name, I just need to come here and change this to name, and this will get me the name of the user. When I run my code again, we have James Gordon. When I change this to email, we get the email. Now the same way we can actually get data using this syntax, we can also we can begin to update the content of the dictionary using the same syntax. So let me come back to this place and say I want to try to update the email address. So I'll just say user square brackets email, then I would say equals to, because I'm trying to change the content of the dictionary. So I'll say equals to, then let me set a new email address. So let's say gordon@gmail.com. Now when I run my code again, as you can see here, the email has been updated, gordon@gmail.com. The same thing reflects here also. So we can begin to update the contents of this dictionary, and we can also add more fields, because we have 3 fields here by default. Now we can begin to add more fields there also. So what we just need to do is do like the exact same thing we have here. I'll just say user, let's say we're trying to add one more value. So let's say phone equals +234 blah 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 blah. Then when I run my code again, we now have the phone as a part of the dictionary. So that's how you begin to add and get more values from the dictionary. But also let's say we try to get some values from our dictionary but it's not existent. Let's say I try to print, let me remove this. Let's say remove this, or let me just leave it there. But let's say before I add it to the user object, before I add it to the user value, let me try to get the contents of that phone number. So let's say print user, then square brackets phone. As you can see here, before this place, I have now actually set the value of the phone number. So as of now, in this part of the code, is not currently existing. So now when I run my code, it should be showing me an error that I'm trying to get the key of phone, key error. So like it's not recognizing this the inside of the user dictionary. There's nothing like the phone value there. So that means I have to come back down here to be able to access it. So now, but sometimes we need to do things like this where we check if the user's phone is stored, but if it's not stored, we want to like still get a response. We don't just want our program to be showing errors. So when I come back here, and let me comment this out for now. When I run my code now to show the phone number, because as of the time when I printed it, it was already existing. So let me just go ahead and comment this back, or let me still leave it anyways. So now, but what I want to do here is I want to use the .get method. So the .get allows us to set default values. So even if you can't find this value inside of my dictionary, show me like a default value. So let me just go ahead and say print user.get. Now say I want to get the email of this user or the phone number of this user, but if it's not there, just tell me something else. So I'll just go ahead and say phone, and then I'll put the comma and say, okay, this is default value. So if it's not there, just say no phone number found. And when I run my code again, initially I would see no phone number found. Then later, the phone number after it has been set to now display like right from this part of the code. So but from here, like if it's not there, to just show no phone number found. But when I come back to this bottom of the place, when I come back to this place and say print the phone number if it is there, but if it's not there, show the phone number, no phone number found again. And when I run it now, it will still show the phone number, because as of the time when we go to this part of the code, the phone number is now existent, so it's no more invalid. So that's how to use dictionaries inside of Python. So now let's get to the next one. Let's get to sets in Python. Let me go ahead and create a new file for that. But before then, actually, let's actually see one of the real life applications for this dictionary. So let's say we're trying to store a user's like a contact page, for example, like a contact application. Let me just go ahead and delete all of this and create a new dictionary for that. So let's say contact equals. So now we want to store like key value pairs of people's names and their phone numbers, the same way we have it inside of our like contact application on our phone, where you can search a name and find the phone number that is related to that person's name. So let's go ahead and enter a few names and phone numbers here. So let's say Ben, and the phone number for Ben, let's say, is 2345, any other thing there. So let's go ahead and enter one more. Let's say James. Let's enter one more and say Beatrice, and let's say for this one plus 234. And so now we have 3 different contacts inside of our contact variable. So now we can begin to use their names to search for the numbers. So let's say I want to get like the user input. So let me just go ahead and fetch the user input from here. Let's say name equals input, and then for the input I want to say enter user name. And now when the user enters the name, we try to get like the phone number that is corresponding to that name in our database. Let me just come back here and say print contact dot get, and now let's say name. But now we don't want name because we are trying to get the name that is the phone number that is corresponding to the name that the user typed. So we just come back here and say name without quotes, because we're trying to use the variable in this case. And then we put comma and say not found. That means we try to get the name, but if it's not found, we just tell the user that okay, this phone number you're trying to find is not found. So let me run this again and see dix.py. Now you can see enter username. Let me say Ben. Now you can see we have the phone number for Ben. Now let's actually update our data a little bit. So let's say let me just leave it at that actually. So let's say for James. Well, here you can see not found. That's because the James that I had here in my database inside of the contacts is J with lowercase j, but here when I'm trying to get it, I'm using the uppercase J, so that's why it's not showing. Now when I run it again using lowercase James, we have the phone number. So that's how to use and apply dictionaries in Python. Now let's learn about tuples in Python. So let's create a new file for that. Let's say tuples. .py. So now tuples are very similar to lists, except it's not mutable, which means it's immutable, so you cannot edit it as soon as you create it. So let's say you create a tuple of 5 values, you cannot update it, it's just there, it's like permanent. So tuples are also separated by commas. It's a collection of values very similar to the list, it's just slightly different, meaning it's just immutable. So let's create a tuple here. Let's say we try to store like an address. We don't want it to be changeable. So let's say address equals. So a tuple is going to, the syntax for a tuple is just like open and close brackets, not like the square brackets for list. So let's say open and close brackets. Now we have everything else is going to be like the same. So we have everything separated by commas. So let's say number 1, James Street at nowhere. So we have like an address right now having 3 values. So it's very similar to the list. We have like the same separated by comma stuff, and let's try to print it and see what it looks like. So let's say print address. So now when I run my code again, let's say Python 3, then for tuples .py. Oh, I don't have it in my right folder, so let me just move it. And now when I run my code again, we have 1 James Street nowhere. So let's, unlike the list, as I said, it's immutable, so we don't have anything like append or add or remove, anything like that. So when I say address dot append, that's just not valid. So you can see here it doesn't change color because it's not recognized and it's not valid. So when I run my code again, that'll be raising like an error. Tuple has no attribute append. So it also has the indexing system like the list. So I can do something like this. I can say print address of 1. So that will print like James Street. You can see here it has James Street. So it has the indexing like the same thing as the list. But you know, in the list when we try to set some values, so let's say I try to set a value inside of my address now. So let's say address address and square brackets of 1, and I try to update it to equals to like a new value. You can see here, let's say James close. Now this will be raising an error for me that I cannot set the value. Here you can see tuple object does not support item assignments. That means I cannot update the contents of this tuple because it's just there, it's permanent. So that's all about the tuple. Let's now get to sets inside of Python. So let's create a new file for that also. Let me just go ahead and say in lesson 2, create a new file. Nope. Sets.py. So sets is also very similar to the list, just a few differences. So sets is like a collection of values also, but this time it's a unique collection of values. So we don't have like duplicate items, and it's also ordered. So as soon as you enter values in any order that you want, it will be ordered immediately you enter them. So if you enter in values in like 1357 or 1375, you get everything ordered as back as 1357. So to create a tuple inside of a set in Python, the syntax is a little similar to that of the dictionary. So we have the curly braces come back here also. So let's say my set equals, we have the curly braces, but now instead of the key value pairs that the dictionary has, we just have everything separated by comma. That's getting it from the list. So let's say something like 1 4 9 2 5 6. Then we have 2 again. So we have 0 4 again, 2 again, and let's say 1 more time. So here you can see we have a few duplicate elements, like 1 appears twice, 4 appears twice, 9 is like, so it's not ordered in this case. So we have 1 4 9 2, then so we have a few numbers appear like multiple times, and then the whole thing is just random, it's not ordered. So let's try to print this and see what actually happens when I print my set now. So let's say print my set. Now let's enter my data. So now let me run my code again. Let's say python 3 for sets.py. Now here you can see 01245 0124569. So you can see that it has been ordered and every duplicate has been removed. So one appears twice, one only appears once here. So you can imagine it's like a bag of marbles where everything is just something different. So you can also add values to your set. Let's say my set dot add. So we don't have the append method here because we don't want to append to the end of the set, because the whole thing is ordered. Even if you append to the end, if it does not belong in the end, it will not stay there. It will just go ahead to where it's supposed to be inside of the set because it needs to be ordered. So let's say my set dot add, and let's add 7. Now when I run my code again, we have 7 is now a part of the set, and it's where it's supposed to be. It's between 6 and 9. So that's correct. We can also add different values to our set, like strings and name and everything that we want, but it just needs to be unique. One item can't appear twice. So that's the whole idea of it. So let me come here, remove this because we don't need it, and let's actually get some inputs from the user and begin to use these inputs in our code. So let's say add value equals inputs, and now let's add a value to the set. Now when I run my code again, let's just add this. So let's say my set dot add, and now let's say let's say add value. That's the variable that we have there. So now when I run my code again, as you can see, it's asking me to enter add value to set. So let me say 8 because 8 is not currently in our set. But here you can notice that we have 8 surrounded by quotes. That's because by default, whenever we use the input feature, it stores our data in text. So I need to convert this back to an integer for it to actually work with the rest of the things that are here. Let me just set this, the same syntax we used in the previous video. Let me wrap this with the int operator. So let me put this around int. Now this will be converted to an integer. That means it would actually be sorted whenever we now run the code again. So now let me put 8, and now you can see 0, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's all about sets in Python.